Hi, this is Denis Taaffe, and we're looking at a television interview that I did for Channel 18 news channel in West Lafayette, Indiana. They asked that I come up and interview with them on the air and also play a little bit, which I did, and it went very well. At the time, I was being considered for a Grammy pre-nomination, and that was why they wanted to interview me, which I appreciated. And this is what you're looking at now, and it went very well. It aired several times from what I hear. Hi, this is Guitarist Denis Taaffe, and what you're about to see is a 1999 interview with me. A friend of mine, Trent Terrell, interviewed me at that time. You have to remember, in 1999, I had just released my first debut CD, so I was very excited about that. It might give you a little insight as to what my thinking was and really what direction I wanted to head in at that time. What my plans were as well. It's kind of interesting to see it now. Certainly things have changed. But here it is. So here's part one. Hey Dennis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Dennis Taaffe. I'm a guitarist from Bloomington, Indiana. I'm 30 years old. And I've been playing guitar probably for the last 21 years, something like that. And really I've been trying to develop my own style, focusing on speed, melodic phrasing, and unique guitar techniques to try to develop my own unique voice and my own unique style.
Now that we know a little bit about you, why don't you tell us about your guitar? What was the first guitar you ever owned?
The very first guitar I ever owned was a little 6-string acoustic. That's the guitar. I couldn't even try to G string at all. My fingers wouldn't reach. The neck was too wide. Remember that. But that started really my interest in guitar. So that's it. Probably I switched to electric guitar probably in about 86, about 1986. Or at least when I started taking it seriously.
What was the first electric guitar you ever owned?
First electric guitar I ever owned. Well, the first electric guitar I ever owned was actually a Sears Silvertone, right? And it had a little tube amp inside the case, right? Built right in. Problem is, at the time, no one told me anything about distortion, so I had no idea what the difference was, really. And I actually went and put it in my closet, right? And I put it in my closet because I figured that there really wasn't that much difference between that and the acoustic guitar.
Did you take lessons?
Oh yeah, when I first started, I took lessons, and I got real lucky because I found a teacher who was really, really good. He was well known, especially around Bloomington, as a really, really good guitarist. So I really found him, and his name was Chris Hammond. Really gave me a foundation to work on. I'm still working. Yes, and they basically showed me that guitar takes a lot of discipline and a lot of hard work.
What's kept you motivated?
Well, what's kept me motivated playing guitar is that what I discovered is that basically it's almost endless. The more that you play, right? The more you learn about it, the more that you practice, the more that you learn about it. And I also found that really it becomes a lifelong art. Really, that's the best way to describe it. If you put it down for a month, let's say, and then you pick it up a month later, right? You'll find that basically you pick up where you left off. And so it's really never ending. There's no end to the possibilities of the guitar as far as your progress.
What guitarist inspired you to play at the beginning?
Yeah, so guitarist stuff. Well, in the beginning I probably went through a lot of the what most guitarists listen to. Guitarists like Jimi Hendrix certainly had a profound influence on playing. Everybody from Jimmy Page, not so much Eric Clapton, though. It's just one guitarist in particular that's often overlooked, Alvin Lee, right? 10 years after, I thought was a really big guitarist when I first heard him. I thought, wow. So a lot of the guitarists like that, early guitarists, standard 60s guitarists, I guess, would be the best way to describe it.
What about now? Who are your influences?
Wow. Okay, now influences, gosh, I would probably say Alex Lifeson of Rush. Most definitely. He's probably one of my biggest influences. Especially his chordal type playing. It was really, to me, fantastic. Very unique. Other players are Eric Johnson. Let's see. Definitely Joe Satriani. He's great. And other guitarists as well. And then I also have some influences that really, they're musical influences, but not necessarily guitar influences. I don't necessarily play guitar. Two of those would be John Carpenter, Sinead O'Connor. Yes, Sinead O'Connor, she's a fantastic singer, and what I've discovered is that she has a really great sense of dynamics and phrasing in her singing. Very interesting. Yeah.
Any of these guitarists live?
Well, actually, now that I think of it, I did see certainly I saw Alex Lifeson play live with Rush. Fantastic, really good. But also, I saw Joe Satriani, and that was probably, gosh, I'm not sure of the year exactly, but probably 1988 or so. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that a guitarist, one could be so good. It was really, really fantastic. The things that he played, the songs were great. Everything was great. In fact, after the show, he threw me a pick. At that time, I was pretty young, and basically, I was so mad that he played so well, and that I would never reach that stage. That I took the poor pick and I threw it out the window on the way home from the show. But certainly, I regret it now, and I realize that it was a pretty stupid thing to do. But I guess when you're young, and you're still developing, you don't realize at that time that every guitarist, can reach that level. And the great thing about guitar is that every guitarist eventually will develop their own unique style. So there is no competition. But at that time, I was very competitive. So I thought it was a good story to tell, I guess, with Joe Satriani. But he's just a really great player. Really great. And big influence.
You recently put out a new debut CD. How did that come about?
Yes. I had always, just as part of my learning, I've recorded on, little 4-track cassette recorders. I made little demos and things, and I've gone through, I can count the number of little 4-track recorders, and I made a few songs from there. Sometimes no drums at all, no concept of rhythm and those kinds of things. But eventually, for this CD, really that came about because digital recorders became affordable. Okay, and the second that happened, that really spawned my interest. And that's one dream that I had always had, and that I really thought was possible, but I was pretty discouraged that people said that it's not possible, was that basically with an 8-track recorder, okay, that basically one person, could record an album with an 8-track recorder. And, I calculated the number of tracks that I would need for drums, the number of tracks I would need for guitar, and those kinds of things. And so finally I did get a recorder, and I tried, recording a few things, and from there it just became an obsession, really. And at the time, from what I remember, there were not a lot of available. It was the 90s, and really it almost seemed like good guitar playing took a back seat, at least compared to the 80s things. And really, I wanted to hear a guitar record, and they were kind of hard to find. There weren't that many. There were a few releases, but not that many. And so I decided to make my own in that way.
I noticed that you played all of the instruments, recorded and mixed everything all yourself. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I would say it is. And I'll tell you why. One thing is, once I heard an album by Steve Vai, right? Perhaps maybe not one of his best albums, but it's one of my personal favorites. And what was really interesting about it was that it was basically recorded in his home studio. Same type of thing on an 8-track recorder, I think, and I absolutely loved it. In fact, I liked it a lot better than some of the larger bands, And he had pretty much played a lot of the instruments himself, and I liked it a lot better than some of his band recordings. Okay, and so basically when I did that, that really had me playing. Plus, the other thing is you can't really find that many players who are willing to play at 3 or 4 in the morning, And I can't count basically the endless hours at night that I would stay up recording, And then in the morning I'd be really tired, but at least I'd have 2 or 3 tracks completed.
How long did it take you to complete the album?
Well, I had probably one version of it done, I'd say probably in about 3 or 4 months, probably. Because I really took my time with it, and I really wanted to do things right, And the other thing is, at the time I knew nothing about production. I knew nothing about mastering, about mixing even, Basically, I bought the recorder, and from there, a lot of it was trial and error, that kind of thing. But through that process, I also discovered who I was as an artist, and what my style was starting to sound like. And probably from the time that it was sent to manufacturing and then released was probably 2 years. 2 years. And the 1 year was basically spent gathering money to have the CDs released.
What were you trying to achieve with this album?
Well, I tell you, the very first thing is I wanted to make a CD that I liked to listen to. That was probably the most important thing, because I really wanted to hear a guitar CD, and I hadn't in a long time. And that was my goal, really, to make a guitar CD that I would enjoy. But more than that, I guess, is to start to develop my style. And I'm very pleased with the CD as my own debut CD, I guess. But I think there's a lot more that can be done, and I'm happy with the results. And it's been great as far as developing a style and starting to really hear what I'm developing.
The liner notes mention Echo Park Studios and others. get help with your CD?
Yeah, I did. Not so much in the recording process or the mixing process. Okay, I did those on my own and played all the instruments on it. And got together with Mark Hood. It was on a Saturday morning. And basically, we went through all the material and basically pieced together an album from that. And he did the mastering for it. And we brought it up. Made it sound great. He did some great edits too. So that was really great. Then it was shipped over to Implosion Publishing in Florida. Right? And they manufactured it and released it. Cradle picks included a free cradle pick in each CD. So that was really nice of them. And then I also had an entertainment attorney doing the promotion.
Several endorsements with some music equipment manufacturers. Can you talk a little bit about those and how they came about?
Sure. Yeah, well, I endorse Jackson guitars. Definitely. Love those guitars. And in fact, one of the guitars I play in there, the one from 690 Rose, play a Jackson guitar as well. So, yeah, I was real happy. I basically sent Jackson a CD, they liked what they heard, and signed me up. I've been playing the Jackson guitars. I used some of them to record. I also endorse Cradle guitar picks. There's a little Cradle. See that? It's a real unique pick. It's got angles on both sides. Right? It makes it really easy to hold. But that revolutionized my technique. It gave me a lot of speed. I was able to play a lot faster and with a lot of more control with it, and basically the cradle pick really I think should be more well known, probably will be soon. And as I said before, they helped me with the CD, and they put a free pick in every CD, every one of my CDs. So, yeah, definitely worth trying. Then I also endorse Seymour Duncan pickups. I used the JD model, that's a Jetback model. Actually, very pleased with it. No problems at all, and it helps me to get that tone that I really like. And one last thing that I use is, and endorse, I guess, is Elixir strings. Right? And these strings have been great because I used to go through a pack of strings probably every 3 days, at least. If that. I guess when you beat on the strings enough, they break or they start to rust, and then they sound real bad. And these Elixir strings are a lot better. They've got this coating, and they last a long time. I can go probably 2 weeks, maybe sometimes 3 weeks. So those are my endorsements. And the way those came about is they say I sent them a CD, and people liked what they heard, and signed me up from there. And I had been using their products before then anyway. So. And I tell you, I've been asked that a lot, believe it or not, about the album title. No. Well, certainly I've seen it, yeah. No, the reason why it's called Abducted by Aliens is actually because there was a song on the CD called Abducted by Aliens, but also because of the cover. I walked into my friend's house one day, and I saw this basically computer image that he had made on his computer, and I just thought, wow, that's really fantastic. And that's a great image, and it looks fantastic for an album. And at the time I already had an album cover all picked out for my album. But I asked him, what did you do to use that? And
1.5 And so from there, we actually changed the name of the album to Abducted by Aliens because it really fit that cover. And I think that CD, I just really, I made that cover real proud of it.
There's some really good tracks on that CD. Night at the Beach, and Daybreak is the River.
Yes. Yes, I like that one a lot. Yeah. That's probably one of my favorites, It's really unique, and it's funny because, Daybreak is the Ripper, basically it was based on a friend of mine loaned me a book that was basically that they had discovered the diary of James Maybrick, and I thought that, that basically was Jack the Ripper, and they took that from the diary. And so I read the book, and really that song was inspired by the reading of that book. And I think what was funny is that, it was, and the idea was, to consider how sinister, he must have been to be Jack the Ripper. And so it was a pretty sinister song. It actually has a real dark moment. But when I sent it to the copyright office, for the registration, I accidentally typed Mayberry instead of Mayberry. So when I got that back, I was for a sinister song we called Bayberry in the River, that didn't quite work out well. But we got that corrected, so not really about that anymore.
Your debut CD has been very successful on the internet, and you've gotten great reviews in guitar magazines such as 20th Century Guitar. Are you pleased with the results of your album so far?
Well, it's definitely brought me a lot of exposure that I didn't have previously. Previously, I didn't listen, no one ever heard me. So people are starting to hear me and some international sales from the CD. So that's real fun. Real fun to see, who's buying the CDs and where. So that's very helpful, and it's helped me to build a presence. Even on the internet, certainly has been a big help. So yes, I'm very pleased. I'm happy with the reviews that I've gotten for it. Though, as I always say, I think the second one will be better. But I'm very pleased, especially for a debut album, and especially with the things I've learned from it. That's probably the most important thing, is what I've learned, playing wise, recording wise, and also the aspects of the music.
You hinted at a second CD. What are your plans for the future? Do you continue in the same direction?
Well, actually, really my style has changed. Because one day I walked in a music store and they had a looping pedal board. I'd never tried one before. Pretty new on the market. It's a kind of phrase sampler. And I tried one of those, and it was just completely blown away. It was fantastic. It allowed me to play things that I could never play before with it. It was a great practice tool, and basically you would play something, and then through the pedal board, you would start playing it back, and you would start moving it. And so as far as that goes, that's really my style has changed in that way. And I'm really developing a new approach really to this style. And it's really, I'm finally creating sounds I'm starting, that I'm hearing. In the past, one of the things that was a real disappointment was playing wise. I never could quite, get the recordings that I wanted or that I heard in my head. I didn't get those sounds. And now it's starting to really become possible. It's really fantastic. I've just scratched the surface of that. I've just been doing it
for a while now, but it's definitely that's the direction I'm going in, and I'm very, very excited about the possibilities of that.
So, are you a one-man band with this new technique? Can you play that live?
Exactly. Yes, I can. Yeah. In fact, that's probably one of the biggest disadvantages of making the debut album without a band. Is that then how do you play it live, right? And sure, you can play with tapes and things, but nobody really wants to do that. So, but with this new approach, that's one of the fantastic things is that really you don't need a band, and that's, I suppose, a one-man band. I really wouldn't call it that. How about one-man guitarist, right? It's playing live with regular guitar loops, and I also use a drum machine that I control as well with pedals and things. And I use 2 looping pedal boards, and then I can create layers on top of that, and it's just very, very unique sound. But it's also a very, very large sound. I use something like 6 cabinets, right? Almost in a surround sound fashion. And 2 of those are bass cabinets, for a real low end. So really, with the combination of the looping pedal boards, the bass cabinets, the drum machine, and the regular guitar, you pretty much, have the same type of sound as a band would have, except that it's just one person, and it's just a great sound. But a lot of
You really need all of that for this new sound?
Well, I tell you, when I started experimenting with that was one of the big problems with the equipment. 1, it was very expensive. 2, there was a lot of it. I mean, a lot of equipment. I had to try a lot of different things. Everything from 14-channel mixers to the number of cabinets, the number of power amps and things. To answer your question, to do it correctly, you really do need that equipment. In fact, I certainly could use more if I could afford it, for one. Financially, it was a big struggle as well. But it was worth it for the experimentation to finally get the sound that I heard. And I tell you, when everything's running in stereo, you're actually there and you're playing and everything's working well, for me, it's really, that makes it.
Is anyone else using this sound and style right now?
Well, I can't say that I've actually heard anyone doing the same kind of thing I'm doing. Though in the past, there is a guy named David Torn who's doing that kind of thing, but it really is different. Different in the sense that I suppose we approach it in a different manner, and so it is a very different, unique sound. I really, I want to keep working at it.
Well, that's a really innovative technique that you've got. What are your future plans with this new style?
Future plans, really, ultimately, what I'd like to do is to develop it to its full potential. And right now, I really think I've just scratched the surface of what's possible using this. It's really a new approach. It's almost like learning to play guitar again. But the great thing about it is rather than replacing what you already know, you're adding. Like the regular normal guitar playing is still a very important part of it. So, there's a lot more work to be done. But I'm very pleased so far with the results.
A little bit of new technique.
Oh, well, yes, I suppose some of the techniques that I've developed that I suppose are a little unique is I've approached a different way of using a sweeping technique. arpeggio or chord or a lick or something like that, what they'll do is they'll play one note per string, and get this kind of effect. One, you can always tell what it sounds like, and the idea is that you can play it quickly. Well, I've developed, I guess, a different way of approaching that. Rather than playing one note per string, I play, anywhere from 2 to 3 notes per string, and you get a lot of faster sound with it, something like this kind of stuff. Okay. So, makes it very easy to get a real smooth legato sound from it, from this kind of sweep techniques.
Where did you learn the advanced techniques like that?
Well, to be honest with you, probably the way that I learned them was trying to do the conventional techniques and finding that they didn't work for me. I was very impatient. I always wanted it to sound, like it does on the record or something like that. And so, from experimenting with that, I basically came up with what fit my style better, right? And found different ways of playing it. And really that's how my style came about, and it's been working for me. And I'm still developing that.
Are there any other techniques that you've come up with?
Well, I would say probably one of the techniques that I've come up with really is my approach to phrasing. Where the notes come from, and that kind of thing, and how loud is each note compared to the last note. Trying to make smooth passages. A lot of that has to do with timing and those kinds of things. I've done a lot of it with string skipping as well. So those kinds of things have really helped me develop a style like that, and develop some techniques that are a little different. I don't want to give everything away though.
Are you planning anything new in multimedia ideas?
Well, certainly, yes, I would say so. As far as multimedia ideas, certainly I'd like to do an instructional video. I think that'd be really interesting. In fact, there's plans in the works for one. So that should be coming up pretty soon.
When?
This is the second interview, take 1. What we've done is we've set up the TV, although the color isn't the greatest on it right now. We've set that up so that we can monitor what we're doing. And I have to keep reminding Dennis not to stare at it the whole time.
Well, I was staring at one camera.
That camera was on.
I thought you said it wasn't.
It was on that whole time. You asked me if it was on. I said, no, it's off. Because it was off. I had turned it off.
Oh, it was recording?
Yeah.
Oh.
I want to start the beginning over.
Pedal board per speaker. Okay, and it gives me a little flexibility, and it's those types of things I'm still working out, in detail. There's still a lot to do. It starts to get very complicated, but at the same time you want to maintain the high quality sound, and the more cables that you start using, right, and the more equipment, the more sound it can generate, right, and bad sound. In other words, hiss and unwanted distortion that you don't want. So you want to keep the sound as clean as possible. Okay. Other things will be live solo electric guitar shows using this new approach, and that I'm very, very excited about. that, I'd also like to do some live albums, you know, because this type of approach lends itself to live playing very, very well. The looping and so on. In fact, it's primarily live playing. The recordings, you can certainly make recordings as well. So I plan to do a studio recording and a live recording, you know, of that approach, and also do some solo electric guitar shows with that.
You've been very aggressive marketing yourself so far. How has the internet worked to your advantage?
Well, the internet certainly has given me exposure that I wouldn't otherwise have, and especially overseas. You know, it's very surprising. It's not just the U.S. is using the internet. In fact, the whole world is using the internet. I've sold CDs in Brazil, you know, Singapore, just places I would just never think of selling a CD there. And it turns out you know, there's guitar fans all over the place.
Are you going to have any of your music or video on the internet?
Yes. In fact, that's one thing we like to do, is do a live webcast.
Do you still have fun playing guitar?
No, I do, absolutely. In fact, I play, probably every day. And absolutely, I love it. And it's great because you never stop playing.
What are your plans for the future so far?
Plans for the future so far? Definitely very committed to this new approach, the looping, the pedal boards, because I'm doing a lot of solo electric guitar shows. And that really is something I've developed, and I want to see it go to its full potential. And I've just scratched the surface of what's possible. It's a really unique sound. Basically, hard to explain, but it's a really great sound. Hi, my name is Denis Taaffe, and I'm here with my guitar setup. And I guess I've been asked to tell you a little bit about it. So I'll start here, obviously, with my guitar. It's basically I have two racks here. Okay, this rack, okay, it's an 8-space rack, is dedicated to specifically just my guitar sound, my regular guitar sound. And from the top to the bottom, I've got a power conditioner, a BBE sonic maximizer, gives it a little bite to the sound. From there, an S200 Digitag, it's basically an FX processor, it gives me some reverbs, delays, and so on. Then I have a Hush 2CX, and that keeps things quiet. And then I have a Tube Effects, which is a guitar preamp, and I use that. That's really the core of my guitar sound. And then from there, just a vent panel, and then here a 5050 Classic Series power amp, and it's a tube power amp, off tube stereo. So that's really the core of my guitar sound. Okay, in this rack, this is more my looping rack. Okay, provides the additional sound besides the regular guitar sound. And from top to bottom here, we have also a power conditioner. From here, this is a custom unit made for me. It has a stereo chorus box built in here, which is really used as a splitter. And behind this panel here, we've got a whole bunch of jacks that route things in different ways all throughout the system. And this is just power button here. Then I have two Digitag S200 FX processors, and both of these provide also reverbs, delays, and things. One is dedicated to a drum machine, okay, which is this panel here that's kind of sticking out right now. This is a MIDI octopus, this unit here, and what that unit does is basically, it has to do with the switching. When I hit a switch on the pedal board, it can switch different units throughout the racks. Below that, I have a 200-watt power amp, single space, and it's a micro tube. It's kind of a hybrid between a solid-state amp and a tube amp. Okay, and that powers two Marshall 2x12 cabinets. Okay, and then a vent panel and another PV5050 all-tube power amp. Yeah, you can tell I like tubes, but it really helps me get that sound that I'm really after. And then above here, right at the top of the rack, I have a Mackie 14-channel mixer. Okay, and that mixes signals together, mixes all the different processes together. So that's the rack system there. I use four Marshall 212 cabinets. They have two 12-inch speakers in each cabinet, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if you can see them. 1 and 2. Yeah. So I use four of those. Below the rack here, I have an ADA. It's actually a bass amp, but more than a bass amp, it can also be set for a full range type of sound. And I use it really for monitoring, so I can hear what I'm doing. But it also adds to the low end quite a bit. Besides that, I also use one other amp. I don't know if you can see it in the photo or not, but it's just a really old PV bass amp. It's a TKO 65 actually. It has 65 watt, but it has this huge 15-inch speaker, and it really gives that low end sound. And it's responsible for most of them. Then along my pedal boards here, and you have to remember that so this whole setup is still undergoing experimentation. I still need a lot of cables, and there's still a few pieces of equipment that are missing that I really need, and hopefully I'll get them someday. But for now, this is what I'm working with. Here I have a looping pedal board. Right, it's a boomerang here on the right. This is actually a volume pedal, but it's used as an expression pedal. What that allows me to do is basically control these effects units here, individual parameters. For example, the amount of delay or the amount of reverb on the sound itself. From there we have a MIDI mitigator, RFC1 pedal board. I've had this thing for probably 10 or 12 years. The company's pretty much out of business, unfortunately, so hopefully this one will stay working for a while. But this is basically the main switcher. This switches mostly the units in this rack, but it can also switch some of these if need be. And I use these to control basically all the different kinds of sounds. I can go from a clean sound to a distorted sound with this pedal board here. From there, below I have an ADA MIDI controller, MC1. ADA, unfortunately, is also out of business. I guess I use kind of a gear that maybe is not very well supported, but at the time, you know, that it came out, it really did a nice job, and I haven't found units that can do quite the same thing as well. So this little unit here actually controls the drum machine and one of the processors. Okay. Besides that, and this is a true bypass. Okay. It's basically a stereo switch box that basically I have modified to basically be a stereo type stick. It brings stereo signals in and out of the chain, of the guitar chain, to create the complete sound. And then along this side, I don't know if you can see this little pedal here. This is the foot switch that was made for me, and it's 3 controls, and it basically controls the jacks that are behind here, and it's a stereo ADC switch. In other words, I can run just the Marshall cabinets, okay, or I can also run the bass cabinets alone, or the bass cabinets with the Marshall cabinets. Just give me a little flexibility. Besides that, it can also be used to basically have the looping pedal boards play out of both speakers, or one looping pedal board per speaker. Okay, and it gives me a little flexibility. And it's those types of things I'm still working out, you know, in detail. There's still a lot to do, you know. It starts to get very complicated, but at the same time you want to maintain the high quality sound, you know, and the more cables that you start using, right, and the more equipment, the more sound it can generate, right, and bad sound. In other words, hiss and unwanted distortion. Okay, so and that's pretty much it. I forgot there's a couple pedals back here as well. Okay, this pedal right here, I don't know if you can see it, a little teeny thing. It's just one switch, and what that switch does is it controls this chorus unit here. There's a sweep effect that can be turned on and off. Okay, really gives it a real stereo sound. Okay, and then besides that, I use a Yamaha pedal right here. I don't know if you can see that, a little pedal as well. And basically what that does is, with the drum machine, right, it can start or stop the drum machine, but also it can create fills, okay, with the drum machine. And that's basically it for now. I mean, that is my setup, but the setup will change. For right now, I'm very happy with the sound, though there's still quite a ways to go. So that's my setup. Hello, this is Denis Taaffe, and for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been writing a monthly instructional column for a magazine called Musicians Hotline magazine, which is in print as well as online. And how this came about is one day I was going to my mailbox, and sure enough, there was a free complimentary copy of Musicians Hotline magazine. I thought, wow, this is great, a free magazine. And so I took it inside and started flipping through it, and there were a lot of ads and some columns as well, which I found very interesting. Overall, I thought, wow, this is a really cool magazine. And at the time, you have to understand that I was very much into learning and learning to play and trying to find sources to learn to play. And it occurred to me that, gosh, after flipping through this magazine, the one thing that's missing from it, for it to be a guitar magazine, is an instructional column. So, there wasn't a lot of thought behind it, really. I wasn't, totally prepared to do it myself, in fact. So, I thought on a whim, there I saw the publisher, Trent Salter. Looked pretty cool. He was holding a guitar, his publisher's statement. And I read it, and he seemed very enthusiastic about guitars and music in general, which I thought was great. And there was a phone number there to reach him, And not only that, I think from what I recall, it was an 800 number. So I thought, wow, well, why not? So I just called him up, and called him up, and someone answered and said, hello. And I said, yes, do you think I could speak to Trent Salter? And the voice on the other end, you got him. And sure enough, right there, I was speaking to Trent Salter. He was a publisher of Musicians Hotline magazine. And so I pitched my idea to him. And I said, gosh, this is a cool magazine, but really what it needs, is an instructional column. There aren't any in the magazine. I told him a little bit about myself, albums I've released and things I've done just over the phone. And he was really, really for it, and it wasn't very hard to pitch at all. He was really accepting of the idea, from what I recall. I think he said, give me a couple of days to think about it, though he seemed that he was interested in doing it. And a couple of days later, from what I recall, he let me know that, sure, go ahead. And so there it was. I was basically going to write a monthly instructional guitar column for Musicians Hotline magazine. Back then, little did I know what it would lead to. It's really become, I wouldn't say a full-time job, but a constant thing. Because the second you get one column done, they need to get another one in, and so on, always a month ahead of time. And I remember that when it actually came out and I got my first issue, how thrilled I was. This was a really big deal for me, especially back then. I was really trying to get exposure and being ignored by a few other guitar magazines, really. And I certainly think that I could write an instructional column. So I went ahead and continued, and so month by month, I would basically write the column and put it out. Then for a while, basically we're adding audio examples for every one of the examples. And this went on for a few months. However,
normal speed.
I must say that
Example 8.
this became a big chore, really. Getting the files and sending it to them. I hope that we can do that again. At the time, though, I was so busy that it was very difficult to get that done. So eventually that was dropped and the column continued. Now I have to say there were several mishaps, if you like, that almost ended the practice up column for Musicians Hotline. And I tell you, thank goodness that Trent Salford, was very understanding and was really dedicated to having the column continue. One of those is, unfortunately, the Musicians Hotline magazine hosts a guitar show called the Dallas Guitar Show. And I remember in 2003, I thought surely that I was going to go. So I told them, I'm ready to go. I'll be there. I was making plans for it and everything. And unfortunately, some things came up, and it ends up that in the end, I couldn't go. And I thought, surely, that's the end of the column. They won't want me to write the column again, because basically I had missed the show completely, and I was devastated. I really was. Then I got a call, and it was Musicians Hotline. Sure enough, and they were asking, what happened, what's going on. So I explained to them the situation, and I thought, well, you probably don't want me to write the column anymore, thinking that it was over. And they said, no, that's fine. You can continue to keep writing the column. And I did, which is really great. And I've seen the magazine start, from a pretty, not small magazine, but certainly not what it is today, which is really a full-fledged, music magazine. And to me, it was certainly a guitar magazine. I actually prefer it to some of the larger magazines. As far as reading the columns, I think all the columnists are really, really talented. And Trent Salford has certainly done a fantastic job, and his staff as well. And I tell you, the column itself has been fantastic for me, especially on months where I was really struggling and didn't really have much going on musically, especially early on, around 2003, especially maybe early 2004, and this always kept me going, writing this column, on and on and on. I also discovered that for a long time, it was very difficult, to come up with material. In fact, it's still difficult to this day. However, I look forward to it. It's not a job at all. And I find that the material is very interesting. And every time that I write a column, I learn from the material itself. In other words, as I'm writing it, I'm learning as well. And it's really been very, very helpful to me. I've gotten some really good comments about it. In fact, I remember I ran into a person in Bloomington, Indiana, my hometown where I am, and they said, "Hey, don't you write that column in that music magazine?" I said, "Yeah, Musicians Hotline." He says, "Yeah, I use that all the time to learn music theory." And I was really pleased, that people do read the magazine and see it, certainly. It's great exposure for me, but also I'm thrilled to see how Musicians Hotline magazine has grown. Also, they would print the column online, which was really great, I thought. It was really nice of them to do, and kept an archive of the lessons, you know. And I tell you, month after month after month of writing the column, you know, it becomes harder to come up with interesting material. And what I found is, rather than forcing myself, you know, to find a specific topic or that kind of thing, I decided, well, look, I'm still working on things and trying to learn them, so why not, you know, do the column on whatever it is I'm working on at the present moment. And I'm sure if it's going to help me, then it'll help other players as well. And that seems to have gone very, very well for me, because as I'm writing and I'm also learning, and I think others are as well. And I tell you, the tendency is, you know, every lesson has 10 examples, and the tendency is, you know, you want to, you know, show your stuff, basically. You want to show off, and so you want to put in the burning, you know, licks for every example. And I learned early on that while that might, you know, get you exposure as far as an instructional column, you know, that's not the point of it at all. In fact, the point of it is to teach. And so I really worked on that. And sometimes the examples are rather simple, because it demonstrates a concept. And it's a concept that then can be applied to their playing, to the reader's playing. You know, and so I try to make it, in a way, as simple as I possibly can, you know, by including the entire scale from which an example is from and that kind of thing. Guitarist and from Bloomington. And I appreciate everyone that came out. I don't know, you would think that it'd be terrifying to get up in front of all these people and play when you have no idea what you're going to play from one moment to the next. And I have no idea how it's going to work out. For me, for whatever reason, and I can't really figure out why, it's not that way at all. In fact, with electric guitar playing live in front of people, I think it has to do with probably that you concentrate so very much, that you're not really even there, because you have to concentrate, especially when you're improvising like that, because you have to think on your feet. You've got to think very quickly, from one note to the next, and you have to react to what you're hearing, to find complementary parts that fit together. And in fact, I do recall very often that I would play and get through a solo or something like that, doing the improvising thing, and that when I finally was done with it, done playing the solo, then going back to the part is unfortunately, I don't know, it's almost like I wasn't there, and then when I came back, I can't remember what key the song was in. That's happened to me a couple times, really. It's very interesting, and I think it's not like you're, daydreaming or something like that, but it's very much that the music kind of carries you and takes you away, and that is your sole focus. It really is. It's your sole focus, and you're listening very intently the different parts of it. And so when you put that together, I think it's almost like a runner's second wind, perhaps. Something like that. There are moments where you're just not even there. You're just going with it, and it's fantastic. It's just the best feeling. And it's almost like no effort at all as far as the sound, because at that point you're hearing what you want to hear, and you can play what you think would sound good without even working at it. And there are certainly very much moments like that within a composition, especially when I'm playing, especially a long one, where you seem like you're not even there. And then there are also moments where you really have to work at it too, and especially when it's not coming together, and that's a real played 3-4 hours nonstop. It really got to the point where by the end of the show, my fingers really did ache. It's quite abusive, really. I think now, had I to do it over again, maybe I would have played not quite so long. Because by the time you set up, play for 3 or 4 hours, and I'm thinking, when you're doing this looping stuff and it's all improvised, you really have to concentrate, so it's really intense. It's almost like, the equivalent of taking a test or something like that for 3 or 4 hours straight was crazy. I think that it's made me definitely a much better player and made me progress at a really quick rate. I'm glad that the shows were every night. I'll tell you that. I think I would really probably damaged my hand, especially my fretting hand. Constantly moving his fingers, for 3 or 4 hours straight. Especially if your hand is aching by the end of it. And what I mean by that is not a painful ache in your hand at all, but I think it's just, the muscles eventually get tired. They really do. I remember a show, it was probably I think at Borders, it was the same kind of thing, I played for 3 or 4 hours, and at the very end, this guy, he asked me, play something fast, play something, like a rock song, really fast. And I'll tell you, I tried, I did it, as best I could. But I also told him, really, by that time, I don't know that my hand could do it anymore, So really, I don't know. I think it's made me a better player, but at the same time, I'm glad that I was at least a little careful, to warm up ahead of time. That's the thing. If you warm up ahead of time, you can play those kinds of long shows, without damaging your hand, your fretting hand especially. For me, the picking hand was never a problem. It's just, it's a much smaller motion. But I'll tell you, when you're stretching, from one note to another, 5 to 10 frets, it's really pretty difficult, pretty complicated, and it's very stressful on your hand as well. There were several shows like that, and in hindsight, I think it's probably not very reasonable to play, for 3 or 4 hours straight. And the other thing is, I think, is really, you have to give your ears a break too. And I think from a musical standpoint, I didn't have compositions that, that were improvised, and to me, they sounded, really like the complete composition, could be anywhere from 20 minutes to a half hour or something like that, you see. And so I wouldn't stop until it sounded complete to me, and I've taken it as far as it would go, really. And that's the interesting thing, too, is when you're improvising like that. Not only within the song itself, the improvised part of it can last, like I said, 20, 30 minutes, and you really take an idea and build on it and build on it and build on it as far as you can go with it. It's pretty interesting, and I really like it. I do think that playing those long shows, certainly, I'd say, did help me in a lot of ways in the fact that
basically I'm a solo electric guitarist, and solo electric guitar is basically you're playing guitar and then you're also doing guitar loops on the side, right? Where you record little parts of what you're playing and it starts to repeat, and then you can drop things down an octave to make it sound like a bass, or you can swell things in, right? Kind of make it sound like a keyboard, that kind of thing. So there are all kinds of different sounds you can get. Still pretty experimental.
Back then, I was still using my old setup. My old setup was quite complicated, in fact, very complicated, too complicated. It had 2 racks, one guitar rack and one looping rack. And then I also had 4 Marshall 212 cabinets and 2 PA cabinets, plus a bass cabinet. A huge pedal board that had 2 boomerangs and a looping pedal board. It also had a MIDI mitigator pedal board. Pretty much a huge setup, and very complicated, and it took a long time to get it set up. And to be honest, a lot of times I was doing this on my own, or maybe with the help of one friend, 1 or 2 friends, to set up the show. And by the time I set up the show, I was exhausted. And, then to have to face playing for 3 to 4 hours non-stop with no breaks. And not only that, all the material was improvised on the spot. There were no worked out songs at all. I'm thankful for that now, because it really helped to develop my style. But back then, it was quite nerve-wracking, really, and it was a learning process too. It's very complicated to wire that setup for every show too. I mean, there was a mixing board, and just out of the mixing board, there were like 16 different cables that you had to basically set up and plug in every time. Unfortunately, I didn't have the luxury of any kind of custom cable, so a lot of times, a cable that had to go from one processor to another was maybe, a foot in distance, and, I would have to use a 6-foot cable to do it. So behind the rack, the parts that you don't see in this video clip, is just I don't know what to call it really, just bundles and bundles of cables, of guitar cables. I probably spent a fortune in guitar cables, and if one cable goes bad, the whole sound is ruined. everything I'm playing tonight is all the songs and everything are improvised as well. There's no, some of them have an underlying worked out structure, but for the most part, I'm just going to try to play. And it's very interesting because I guess you never know what you're going to get. And, you know, some things work better than others.
I was taking a lot of risks there, really. When you don't have any worked out material, there's no real way to work out ahead of time the show at all. There's no way to really, you know, practice songs that you've played a million times before until they're perfect. It's not like that at all. It's really the part that, to me, makes it so very interesting, and that there are magical moments that can happen, but also you can fall flat on your face. You definitely have to take risks, and take the risk of making a mistake on stage. You know, and unfortunately, you know, when you're playing solo, it all lies on you. You know, you can't blame the bass player for a mistake. You know, give him a dirty look. So you're really on your own there. At the same time, it really helps to develop your playing too. You know, if you're willing to take that chance, a lot of times you find that you come up with leads and ways of playing that you hadn't thought of before, which is pretty exciting, really. And I'm always surprised when I see these videos that some of the things that I've played are very good. Once in a while, usually in the very beginning, I'll see a mistake or two. And I think also part of the development, really, as a player, is turning a mistake, you know, a wrong note or something, into something musical, really, something musical that fits. That's really an art form in itself. You know, if you hit the wrong note, but you can, you know, bend that note up to the right pitch in a certain way, so that sounds very musical, almost intentional in a way. It's not cheating necessarily, but it really, that's something that I learned just over the years, really, just developing as a guitar player.
So it's pretty risky business up here, you know. You hit the wrong note, and if you start looping that note, right, it's just going to come back and haunt you over and over again. So I try to avoid that if I can.
Like anything, you know, when you're improvising like that, you know, if you hit a wrong note or something like that, it really snaps you out of the moment. And oh yeah, what key am I in? That kind of thing. What key am I in, and how do I get it back together? You know, and I'll tell you, I'm quite surprised as I keep doing it and keep improvising like that. I find that mistakes tend to pretty much disappear. Really, disappear. I mean, it's certainly a lot of the shows. You know, I play for 3 or 4 hours, you know, improvising everything on the spot, but there's just no errors at all. No errors as far as notes, or, you know, being in the wrong key, or fretting a chord the wrong way, that kind of thing. Or when you're picking, you know, especially when you're picking quickly, hitting open strings by mistake, and those kinds of things. And I do recall that when I first started playing, that wasn't the case at all. It was, you know, it's probably one mistake after another, actually. Okay, not really.
see, I also just this kind of CD release party kind of a little bit. I guess they made me a nice thing here. But this is my new CD. Here it is. Very nice. It's actually, there's a pretty interesting story to this one. It's made in Canada. That's the first thing. And I have no idea how much trouble that was. Just getting it there and things like that. Well, they tried to rush these, basically. And they did a nice job. I mean, they're here, right? Great. It was pretty funny on the inside, you know. There's like when they were supposed to put a photo, instead of the photo, it says, face photo at bottom of page. That's okay. So anyway, they tried. They also, there's a bonus song on there, I guess. There's supposed to be 12 songs. And when I sent it, there were originally 13 songs. They were supposed to omit one. I guess they forgot, so it didn't quite match the layout. Is I'm trying to really be careful trying to keep it down, you know. Because usually I'm kind of a rock and roll. Dennis. Guitar that nobody likes, you know. So I really going to try to keep it down. A lot of times when you're doing the looping things, you know, another thing to keep in consideration is the volume, right? The volume of different parts, and that's a real problem with these pedal boards. It's just a limitation of it that some of the pedals, you know, don't always come in at the right time, I guess, and they then are too loud for that particular moment. So try to avoid that too. And then the last thing is too, this is something new for me. I'm trying to play standing up, which I've never actually done before. And it's not so bad to trying to reach the pedals, you know, and work the pedals while you're standing up. It's tricky business. So if I fall over, that's why. I try not to. Okay? All right. We'll just have to go, you know, I'll try a couple different songs and see about the volume. Okay, if the volume is a problem, I can turn it down or... Was going to bring more cabinets. So it's kind of a compromise as far as the sound goes, but I think it's pretty good. Pretty good. I didn't have to bring that many. Alright, well anyway, I'll just play this next one. It has absolutely no name, so name it whatever you want. Because actually it's just, this is an improvisation. I started out with this little piece right here. So from there, trying to build on it. You'll see where it goes. All right. is, the quality of the video is not so great, because you have to remember at that time I was using a really, really cheap and inexpensive camera. I think I picked it up at an auction. It was a high-8 camera. It wasn't even a digital camera at all. This was back in the day. It's an analog, for me anyway. And so, gosh, I think I paid $75 for it or something like that. Pretty lousy sound, pretty lousy video quality. I'm glad to have it now, though, to see the video. Hi, this is Denis Taaffe, and I'm going to discuss a little bit my gear setup. And here we're looking at an old setup, which is really a rack-based setup with Marshall 2x12 cabinets. It was 2 rack cases full of gear, very complicated and difficult. I eventually sold those things after the completion of my 3rd album, and my 4th album was really a transition. And here we're looking at a new setup, and this is the setup that I currently use, which is a little more simple and definitely a drastic change. Instead, I've switched over to 2 12 combo amps, 2 of them, one on the left, one on the right. And instead of 2 spaces, I whittled that down to 1 rack space containing a mixer, 2 effects processors, a power amp, 2 drum machines, and 1 looper. Also, the pedal board has changed. Instead of using 2 boomerangs, I now use 1. I use an RP50 pedal, an AB stereo switcher, and a couple other pedals. And there you're taking a look at the rack unit. And as we zoom in a little more closely here, what you'll find is that it's really a very simple setup compared to what I have. You have to understand when I was playing live and even in the studio, there were so many cables that it was really not very helpful to me at all, and very difficult to set up. I also found that with a simplified setup, that in playing live and in the studio, it's much simpler to set up, but also the sound was much clearer. And to get a more realistic feel, I combine 2 drum machines together, okay, via MIDI, and they sync to one of the loopers. I like to call them Jam Man. I had 2 of them, and I sold one. I also sold one of the looping pedal boards. It's really to simplify things. It's a little more difficult to create sounds, but at the same time, it's much, much clearer than it ever has been previously, sound-wise. I still use a 14-channel Mackie mixer, which seems to work well for me. And with a simplified setup, it was really, the heart of it is actually a little RP50 pedal, which is less than $100 effects pedal and preamp. It's really an amp modeler. I also use Behringer Ultra Twin 212 combo amps, and really I use those because they each have 2 separate channels. So one I go direct and one I go more for the looping. Below that, you'll see an ADA bass cabinet, as well as 2 PA Fender cabinets. They're there with a 15-inch speaker and a horn in each. And that is my current setup. And I'll tell you, it has really changed things, as my previous setup was really a tube setup, and this is a pure solid state setup. This means that I've had to really change my playing quite a bit, because with a solid state, there's no chance to be sloppy, compared to tubes, where you can really kind of hope that the tubes will kind of keep things a little more uniform and together. But with this solid state setup, it's definitely not that way. You have to be very careful. On the other hand, it also allows for a lot of sonic possibilities, which are really a good thing, I think. For example, even in the looping part of it, sounds are much clearer, much more clear than they were when I had the rack set up, where things tended to get muddy because of the number of sounds going. And here it's a much cleaner setup, but I've had to really redo my playing. So it's definitely a new stage for me in my musical playing. My main guitar I've been playing for over 20 years and have used for most of the albums I've recorded. It was actually built by Chris Hadding originally, my teacher, and since then has been worked on by numerous people. It's a Schecter neck with an Ibanez body, Seymour Duncan pickups, JB, and hot rails. Best rock guitar I've ever played. While my main guitar was being worked on, I needed a replacement, and I got a Parker guitar, and it's fully stock guitar, much more refined than my main guitar, and I found that I'm going to keep it as an addition. It really gives me some different sounds. Part of getting a setup is figuring out what gear works for you and what gear doesn't. So I've tried a lot of different things. Well, doing the videos came about because I had recorded a lot of live shows and old interviews on analog hi-8 tapes. Eventually, I did get a digital camcorder, a Panasonic, which I think is just absolutely fantastic. The picture is great. And I finally had the computer horsepower to do some video editing, though it's fairly new to me, certainly. And I find it's a very nice way of documenting my progress on guitar.
So here's Vance Music. This is my old music store where I used to teach. There it is, Vance Music Center. So let's go in here, see if they still remember me. So yeah, here we are in Vance Music. Yeah, this is where I used to teach guitar. And look, they still have me on the wall there. Cool. Yeah, that's me. That's nice. I haven't forgotten. So, Bobby, what are your thoughts on when Dennis was teaching here? Have any?
No, I don't even know who Dennis is. Never met the guy.
You ever heard of him? Or?
Nope.
Okay.
Dennis? Dennis who? Never heard of him.
Dennis who?
Never heard of him.
And didn't the dog he was doing?
Phil Gaz, owner of Vance Music Center, talking to you about Denis Taaffe. What can I say about Dennis? Great guitar player, good teacher, plays too loud, but other than that, it's just great.
My name is Eric. We let Dennis teach here one day a week. Of course, we had to keep him in the basement because nobody could stand and listen to the music that he was playing. It was so loud that we all had to get earplugs just to work here. But music stopped the day that Dennis left. We've all been able to hear you.
On occasion, I would tell Dennis to stop practicing because he practiced on his free time in the studio. But you could hear him throughout the store. I ate my lunch in the back room and he was very loud. And it's hard to eat. You heard the same thing over and over. But that helps your playing, so go for it.
I'm going to take you back to where Dennis made all of his noise. This hole in the wall room. Fortunately, when we closed the door, we could still hear him. It was just terrible. But it was only once a week. Dennis decorated it himself too. Tell by all the drab colors.
Look, they still sell my CD.
Many CDs out too. You might check them out. We stock them here at Vance Music.
Wonder for how much. There it is. Look, $10. They're selling my CD.
And we haven't sold one in 5 years.
I'm being prompted here and I don't know what to say.
The day you were here on the 19th of last month. How's that? Listen, I got to teach.
All right.
How long are you gonna be here?
you.